Welcome, everyone. It is E2KG's Deep Dive Podcast. It is episode 5 for the week of August 6th. It is August 6th. Wow, I was going to say April for a minute there, but it is August. It is an A month. It is late in the summer. It is hot, depending on where you are, because it's August. And that's okay, because it is. I wish we could say we had a hot week of news, but it's not, right? I mean, we are we're a couple weeks away from Gamescom over in Germany. We're months removed from E3. We're kind of ramping up. We get a little bit of some trickle of releases here before we really hit into September. But we've got some good news. We've got some financial numbers because it is the E2KG network, so we always enjoy talking numbers. But I can't do that by myself. So here tonight, joining me is Swissguard. How are you, sir?
I am doing well, and you're right. It's been a little thin last few weeks, I think.
Yes, but you know what though? On the E2KG network, we could take that and we could spread it over all the gaming toast. We don't have to. We can just scrape the sides of that jelly jar, peanut butter, and just make it last. But really, I mean, the truth is that there are some good stories here, and just like last week, we took a few kernels, and we really had a chance to dive into them and explore and think about what that means in terms of some larger trends. And so that's what our Monday night show is here on E2KG. And our Tuesday show coming up tomorrow is the Playlist Experience, the Gamers Experience show. So on that show tomorrow night, we've got another full crew, and we've got me reporting out on my gaming assignment. You guys assigned me to play some NHL. So anyhow, we'll come back to that, and you can hear how DBQ did with some hockey, and if he remembered some of the ins and outs of the sport. But tonight we've got ins and outs of some financial numbers. And Swiss, not so much the financial numbers that Agasicles and myself usually end up diving into in terms of investor calls, but we've got some fun sales numbers, both for hardware and from software, that Nintendo released last week. So what stuck out to you in terms of this, and give us a quick wrap up of this Nintendo sales here.
Well, the Nintendo announced that last quarter they sold 1.88 million Switch consoles, which brings total up to 19.67 million Switches. So it's down obviously from the last 2 quarters where they did 2.93 and 7.23 million respectively, but that 2 quarters ago was the holiday season, I believe, and then 2.93 million in the spring. So there hasn't been many releases yet. I'm trying to look for I had the link here
So
for the
this
software
quarter,
sales,
what we
but
had software sales.
yeah,
Oh yeah, we got some numbers on software sales, but this quarter itself, we haven't had a whole lot of new Nintendo games. We get
no,
Mario
we had
Tennis
Octopath
Aces.
Traveler,
Yep, back to
Mario
back.
Tennis Aces.
Yeah. So we've got lifetime sales of games as well. Is that correct for the Switch?
Um, I lost my link, so you're gonna have
Okay,
to.
so we do have lifetime sales.
Yeah,
So that gives us, we get the top 10 lifetime sales of Switch games. Actually, Nintendo graced us with not only Switch sales, but we went back and we got some other consoles as well. So
right.
as some Nintendo aficionados, I think we have some fun stuff to talk about here in terms of where we see trends. What surprises you? So Mario Tennis Aces hits number 10 on the all-time Switch software sales.
Right.
Uh, come,
1.38 million. I got the link.
okay, just
Back.
sneaking in there. So what
Yeah.
else? What else? Take us from bottom to top here.
Well, that surprised me. 1.838 million for Mario Tennis Aces, which is a relatively new title. I think you and I both played. Um, I think we both played the demo, but you have it. I believe your sons have it.
Yes, my sons have it, so which means I have it. My son's finished up the story mode. It played through some matches online. I have not had a chance to play much of it. Uh, my sons have played it against each other. There is some motion control in it, but it's kind of just tacked on. It's not even like we play tennis. It's much more, and I think some of the reports about it being more like a fighting game are more accurate because there's a push pull piece there. There's a give and take of a risk reward with breaking a racket or going for a power move or playing it like a tennis match. And so he's enjoyed it. But I don't know that it is exactly kind of the old Camelot style Mario Tennis either.
So after that, number 9 all-time Switch sales, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, a reboot, not a reboot, re-release of a Wii U title. We have it on the Wii U, and my family really enjoyed it. But it speaks to, I think, the weakness of the Wii U that one of its titles is an all-time top 10 Nintendo Switch game. So,
well, I think it also speaks to the fact that Nintendo tends to have first-party games sell the most, and there's probably not a whole lot more than 10 first-party games that Nintendo's released in the last year either. So
this is also true. But just for comparison's sake, going back to that 19.67 million total Switch units sold, the Wii U sold lifetime sales 13.56 million units.
So I think I found interesting about that, right, is so obviously we know that the Switch has already surpassed the Wii U, and actually the Switch is starting to close in on the GameCube, which had lifetime sales of 21.74. So again, that ends up kind of diving in there. But other piece that Nintendo gave us is their software, their units sold. And that the Wii U while it only sold 13.5 million units, it sold 102 million units of software. So it for the install base, those users purchased a lot of titles. Where right now within the Switch, the 19.6, we only have a software sales of 86.9 or so, almost 87 million. So, and a part of that is it's only been a year and a half comparatively. So I think that also will be interesting to see where those numbers end up.
Interesting. Well, I have some more thoughts on the console versus title comparisons here, but we'll keep going back through the top 10. Number 8, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 1.42 million units, and I think this is another one that's just like you said, there aren't many first party I mean, I guess technically Xenoblade is a first party title, kind of, and
it was released by Nintendo. It was published by Nintendo. Yes,
and it's an exclusive. But there's also a dearth of, until Octopath Traveler, there's a dearth of like JRPG titles, I think. Kirby Star Allies at 1.89. We have that. My son was just playing it, I think, this week. ARMS at 2.01 million units, which, I got a very lukewarm impression of the game from both you and kind of reviewers at large, But as far as competitive titles, there are a handful on the Switch that are very well represented, but there aren't many. It's not like a PlayStation 4, a PC, or an Xbox in that regard.
Well, I think ARMS also came out at a time when there wasn't a whole lot of new franchises or new IPs or even new titles coming out for the Switch, right? That it came out last June, and really
it came out between Zelda and Splatoon 2. So
yes, I would even say it came out between Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Splatoon 2. So it was kind of the rehash of Mario Kart 8. While it has sold amazingly well, it was not necessarily a new title for a lot of people.
After ARMS this one is just flat out because of when it was released. 1-2 Switch at 2.45 million units, because everything I've heard, I've never played it. Everything I've heard is, it's lacking. But
it would have been a great pack-in title, right? My family had a great time with it for the first weekend, and then it became a demo for the system when new people would show up. But otherwise, that was, it should have been a pack-in.
So once we go from 1-2 Switch at number 5, I think this is when we actually jump into the upper echelon of these are the quintessential Switch titles. We got Splatoon 2 at 6.76 million units, And I can say in my household, Splatoon 2 is probably played at least 1 or 2 hours per day among different members of my family. So very popular here. 6.76 million units sold. Um, Home run, new IP. I mean, it's relatively new IP for Nintendo. This one surprises me. At number 3 is Breath of the Wild at 9.32 million units. Number 2, as you foreshadowed, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 10.35 million units. Um, the release of the Wii U title with some additional content, I believe. And at number 1, classic Super Mario Odyssey at 11.17 million units. So I would have thought Zelda would have been higher. But then again, if the Switch really accelerated over the course of this over the course of the summer last year, 2017, and into the holiday season, it would have been, you know, teamed up with Mario Odyssey, I think, under most Christmas trees, I would say.
Yeah, I think that is probably true. That Mario Odyssey or Mario Kart are probably the two most accessible family games that come with it. Um, yeah, I think that the 9 point some million for Breath of the Wild is still a great number. Yeah, I think the question will be is as the system progresses, and right, Nintendo often has evergreen titles with long tails, that I would expect to see Mario Kart 8 surpass Odyssey at some point in time. And as Mario Karts have on other consoles, right? That Nintendo also released titles for the Wii U, the 3DS, the Wii, even back to the DS. And if looking at the Wii U, Mario Kart 8 is the largest seller there, um, it, and it beat Super Mario World by almost 2.5 million. So we'll see kind of where these Switch titles continue to end up.
Yeah. So between the Switch and the Wii U, we have what, almost like 19 million Mario Kart 8 units sold shipped. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, right. It is for that game to have those legs and to get to sell as well as it did on the Wii U, which probably also means that the people that owned a Wii U more often than not were Nintendo more dedicated Nintendo fans. You and I included, right? That we both own one. That probably we also are double dipping onto the Switch as well with Mario Kart. At least I know my family did.
Right. So, as you said, with the Wii U, we got 13.56 million units sold with 102.28 million software units. So that's like roughly what, like a 9 to 1 ratio ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. Um, that's the same relative ratio as like the Wii. So the original Wii, 101.63 million units. So the Switch has a long way to go to take that guy on, but it had 919.94 million units software sold, which is higher than I thought it would be, because I feel like a lot of people that bought the Wii had like Wii Sports, and that's about it. You know what I mean? So like there was 1 or 2 titles, a few shovelware things that they'd get at Walmart, and then they kind of let it collect dust. But
So Nintendo did release the Wii numbers as well, which is crazy because Wii Sports. You're right, 82 million units, 82.8 million units. Whether that counts it as a pack-in, it also was not a pack-in in Japan for a very long period of time, which it also sold. But then you have Mario Kart Wii, which at 37 million, right? So that's a huge number of titles. So yeah, but I think you're right. The ratio there is the interesting part of kind of what that software tie ratio is.
right. And I think, like you said, the Switch, it's still early in the Switch's life cycle. So at like 4 to 1 ish, um, you know, there's still time for that to
Yep.
grow. Um, but I definitely think it's obvious. I think the Switch is going to be one of Nintendo's more popular consoles. So it doesn't come close to the 3DS. What was? Let me get back to the. I'm jumping between like multiple
Sure. Well,
tabs
the
here.
3DS actually, I mean, I think the more it doesn't come close to is the DS, right? Is the 3DS right now has sold almost 73 million units. And again, I doubt that the Switch will ever get to that point because the handheld market is different, the price point is different.
Mm.
Um, but we look at the DS, the Nintendo DS sold, it even dwarfs the Wii, which was
Oh, okay.
incredibly popular, where the Nintendo DS sold 154 million units. So this counts all different iterations, right? It counts the original DS Fat, the DS Lite, the DSi with the little camera, the XL, right, and every other iteration that they made. But that, again, that is a huge jump from the Game Boy Advance, where the Game Boy Advance was 81 million. So Nintendo gambled on the DS and the dual screen, and even back in the early 2000s when they were talking about the three-tiered stool, right? The Game Boy Advance and the DS, the Game Boy, the DS, and their console, a home console, which quickly went away. And so now they're still talking about the two legs of that with the Switch and the 3DS, but we still wonder when and how long those kind of dual developments will continue.
And just for a note, I guess it's kind of somewhat chronological, but they do put the Switch and the 3DS at the top of this particular web page on Nintendo of Japan's website that kind of lists everything. So, but yeah, the Switch you said is coming close to the GameCube. The N64 only had close to 33 million units sold. So, um, it's pretty much probably going to be chasing the Wii, and the question will be whether it'll catch up to the Wii or not. But
The thing I love about these numbers, right, is looking back at you talked about the Nintendo 64 at close to 33, even the Super Famicom, SNES sold 49, and the NES and the Famicom sold about 62 million units. So what it shows, what I really appreciate about it as somebody who grew up through all of these, is how much the gaming industry, that games as a hobby, games as an entertainment choice, how much that medium has expanded, right? Like we thought that the NES was everywhere, and that's 62 million is nothing compared to the prevalence of the DS or the Wii U. So,
right.
or even the 80 million that PS4 has sold. So just the sheer kind of expansion of the market is a really interesting thing to kind of have perspective on.
Yeah, I think pretty much that's probably what I take the most from this because I knew the Switch was selling well. I knew it was going to take a while to chase the Wii. It's nice to put these numbers in context now and just see how far behind, how far it has to go, how successful the Wii really has been. We knew the Wii U was pretty much unsuccessful outside of core Nintendo fans. Um, but looking back at the N64 and the SNES, like I mean, and the NES growing up, like you said, like to me, it's like everybody had an SNES or a Sega Genesis. And, Nintendo was synonymous with video games, right? You have a Nintendo. It was the Kleenex box of video games. So, now I look at these numbers and I'm like, wow, that yeah, gaming has grown. Um, or we've just stuck with it as we've gotten older, and they've been able to graft more and more people onto it. So, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it is a good thing, right? I think it probably is that combination of people sticking with it further, which continues to bring people into that marketplace, and new people coming in. And so I think our last two stories here actually segue nicely into that idea of bringing new people in and but also the expansion and contraction of users as well. So our next story here comes out of Gamasutra. This was at the end of the month, at the end of July, that the Steam user count has decreased 17% since January. So looking at there's another chart here, which I found off of Ars Technica with Kyle Orland. And that chart, looking at Steam users, usually the numbers kind of take a dip, and they've been growing over time in each of the last kind of 4 years that are reported. And usually the January is the high point. January is the high point of each year, that it kind of builds up during the fall and winter into the holiday, and then January hits a peak. But what the chart shows is that we see this trajectory, and then we hit January of this year, and we start dropping back down at a much greater rate than the rest of the last couple years. And so that it's in part, this is attributed to some of the dips that Player Unknown's Battlegrounds has witnessed. Right, last year we were having stories at this time about Player Unknown Battlegrounds hitting 1 million current users or 5 million current users, right? That they kept growing exponentially. And so as they hit a dip, that definitely would affect Steam's numbers. But there's another game out there that has definitely taken over some of those numbers, whether it's pulled people away or just given new audience members that might have gone to Steam for something are now going to the Epic launcher to play Fortnite. And so Epic is not, Fortnite is not on, at least through the PC, right? You're not going through Steam or Good Old Games, or you're going through Epic's launcher to play what is currently the most popular game in the world. At least I shouldn't say that. Maybe the most popular game on Twitch, right? Maybe once we get into the game in the world, maybe there's some mobile game in the Chinese market that dwarfs them all. So I'll we'll hedge our bets a little bit, but I think that is part of this trajectory, is that Steam numbers have taken a dip because of other platforms, of other, we just last week we spent plenty of time talking about EA's Origin Access Premier, right? The Origins launcher, but the Premier aspect of having all their EA games for an annual subscription. And Ubi does this, right? We've got others. I've been playing Destiny 2, and Blizzard does that with their own launcher as well. So there's lots of, the market has fractured a little bit more than it had in the past, and I think that is a piece of it. And our final story is about this market fracturing even more, which I think is even more interesting. Is not only is Fortnite having their own launcher for the PC, but as they are getting ready to move on to Android, they announced over the weekend that they are skipping Google Play entirely. That the 30% cut that Google Play takes for things being sold through the Google through Android is higher than Epic wants to pay, and so they are going to have the ability to download the Android version of Fortnite right from the Fortnite install, right from their official website. So rather than going and searching for it on the Google Play Store, that you'll have to do a web search and be able to download that right from there. And so I'm curious, Swiss, that do you think that this is a one-off because it's Fortnite and it's one of the biggest games in the world with a huge install base and a great ability to get that word out, so the discoverability of this is easy? Or do you think that this starts to crack open the store a little bit and allow other developers the opportunity to put their files up elsewhere and bypass the Google Play Store?
Both. And so, I do think that other developers may try to take, but there are only going to be a handful of premium titles that will be able to to actually leverage this and accomplish this. Fortnite can, if Fortnite had led on Android and then been like, well, we got PS4 and Xbox coming, and PC's next. We're doing iOS and PC coming. This would not have happened. It is simply because Fortnite already is making billions of dollars, money hand over fist, and everybody wants to play it, that they can even entertain the idea of.
Oh, so it's either my connection or your connection. So we'll see how this plays out in the stream here. But in freezing up on Swiss's end. Swiss, are you back there?
I think I'm back.
Okay.
Not sure.
So you were talking about how Fortnite's success allows them the opportunity to to even entertain the ability to bypass the store.
Right. With iOS, I don't think they can really do that.
That is correct, and that's the article here points that out as well. That part of the reason why they've gone through Apple is because it really is the only way to get onto that marketplace. Where there's other ways, I as somebody who has been, has a pretty sizable humble bundle, you know, Android library, that the humble installer has always been kind of side loaded through a website client rather than through. It's still not available on the Google Play Store.
Yeah. So basically, Google kind of, I don't want to say encourages it, but permits it, given the nature of their platform. I can definitely see other companies taking this path. One that jumps to mind immediately is Niantic with Pokemon Go. Um, if we have some future iteration of Pokemon Go, who's to say that they don't decide to um, to go solo? Because that game is, I don't understand. Like every time I see the numbers for that game, I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm like, wow, that's really definitely a thing. Um, so
So let me ask you about that one though, because I would say that Pokemon Go, because of its casual audience aspect, right, or the ability to pull in gamers, or Pokemon fans who are lapsed gamers or not connected, that somewhere like the discoverability and ease of installing it from the store is going to trump having to go into your settings and turn on trust outside sources and find the website to be able to do that, right? So where it'll be interesting to see where that line is in terms of the trade-off from discoverability and ease of access to, is it worth the 30% cut?
I think that's a very worthy criticism. Um, it really, I think, depends on how much the hype train's flowing. People will jump through some hoops to be a part of the zeitgeist, I think. So, um, personally, I wouldn't, but the but we're seeing, like you said, jumping back to this. So they're doing this. They're gonna save 30% of their $1 billion, and that's going to translate to $300 million or whatever. So it's smart. Um, it, well, I don't think they'll make quite that much on Android, but we'll see. um, with Steam, it's interesting to see how much one game can affect their numbers, because everybody's attributing this, like you said, to Fortnite, pulling PUBG users away, pulling people out of the Steam client into the Epic Games client. For me, Steam is just the de facto PC client right now. But like you said, it's already starting to fracture. So there's, EA is not on Steam. They got Origin. We got Activision Blizzard doing their own thing. And again, it's like, if you want to pierce the consciousness, get your game in the hands of gamers, your first thought's going to be, well, I want to be some sort of Steam early access type thing. I want to give out free Steam keys. I want to start building buzz. If you're a big enough player, you no longer need to utilize that gateway. So um I think it really becomes, I don't want to say Steam is like the discount store of PC games, or like, the I don't even say it's non-specialty or second tier. It's just, the premium dealerships are going to be like doing their own thing because they
Yeah,
have the.
I think that's a better way to say it, right? It's that idea of it's agnostic. It's not one publisher over the other. That it for the most part, it's going to bring out anybody who wants to publish there, whether they're AAA major studios or small little indie pieces, right? But that, I think the downside of that, and I wonder about this too, right? And this is where if a Gasicles was here, we'd go into a rant about how difficult the discoverability on Steam is, right? That for a AAA publisher where the quantity of games that you're pushing out is more limited, and you need to make those sales rather than the quantity. Is it easier to cut through that when you're on your own launcher versus trying to get discovered on the giant aspects of Steam? And I think one of the other interesting things there is that Origin has started doing this now as well, is that there are some indie games out on Origin. This last week, as I was looking at Origin Access Premier, there are things like Out of the Park Baseball, which is a whole little indie studio, which is on Origin. Right, and it's also on Steam. But so Origin is even kind of stretching out and expanding that. So I wonder what this looks like if we continue to diversify kind of the launchers, which then also means that you've got how many clients running on your computer to play which games, and trying to keep that straight will be a whole nother, goes back to the while PC gaming was getting easier, and now if we have a fractured marketplace, what does that do to the ease and accessibility of PC gaming?
What's back to your circle back real quick to what you mentioned about like the indie titles on the game. So like each of these publishers needs to have something that causes people to launch their launcher. So you got, Blizzard, Activision Blizzard, you got World of Warcraft, you got Overwatch. People are going to come for those, and they're going to see the Hearthstones, or maybe I'm probably underselling Hearthstone, but some of the smaller titles, or with EA Origin, obviously
Well,
they're
I,
hoping
I
to get
think
on there.
let's go back to Activision there for a minute, right? Like now that they're bringing Call of Duty over to the launcher, that you suddenly expose the Call of Duty people to Overwatch, or you expose the Destiny people to World of Warcraft, right? Like, you start to cross pollinate in ways that you might not have before.
But you also kind of try to get gamers to become, instead of platform gamers, you're getting them to become publisher type gamers, where you're, you know, I feel very much in the Amazon ecosystem, right? So in a way, you're kind of starting to see that in the gaming sphere. With Epic, they have I think they had a couple of titles up there, but I know most people are going there for Fortnite, or everybody's going there for Fortnite. But
Yeah, their Unreal is not
right,
Unreal. Is it Unreal?
Quake maybe. I don't.
Quake.
It's been
Yes.
a few
Yeah.
weeks
There's
since I launched it.
yeah, because Unreal is Bethesda. So yeah, so they've got a couple other titles there, right? With Quake.
But you're right. Like this avoids the problem of discoverability, and you're kind of keeping your clientele close to home. Um,
Hold on, fact checking here. Quake is Bethesda. Unreal is right because it's the Unreal Engine is
right.
Epic. So it's Unreal Tournament, Fortnite, Unreal Tournament, and Shadow Complex are the three games that show up on the launcher.
So, but yeah, it's. I think it. I don't blame a company one bit for going that route. Like to me, it's like, if you're big and powerful enough that you can pull that off, you do it. There is no reason to give Valve 30%. There's no reason to give 30% Google 30% if you don't have to. And so I'm a little bit more forgiving right now with regards to all the accounts, just because, okay, I got two or three launchers, so be it. I'm tech savvy enough to make sure they're not all launching simultaneously and whatnot. Um, I don't think it's gotten to a crazed point yet. I know Agasicles would disagree vehemently, but it's still palatable. Uh, and I just don't see much of a way around it, to be honest with you. I'd rather have this than either with like say there was no special launcher and you just installed games willy nilly, like you said, like we did in the old days. Um, you'd have 50 accounts because every game practically you'd have an account. You'd have a publisher account for everything. Like Steam helps with that. You know, the fact that I can share one Blizzard account amongst all my Blizzard games, that's a that's an improvement. Um, and being able to have a handful of places to go for updates rather than worrying about each game individually. So I still think it's a step in the right direction. So I'm not gonna complain too much. I don't want to give Steam, because as the de facto PC, you know, behemoth right now, I don't want to give them all the power. Like I want them to have competition. So I'll accept the fact that I have to have a few launchers in order to promote competition and you know, from that competition improve services.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, right? That's is it worth the multiple account juggling that we do for the option or the potential for increased services, for faster downloads, for less kind of publisher hoops, because we're not going through another third party for that, coming straight from the developer. It also potentially means that that pricing can be different as well, right? Like the fact that we had a conversation last week related to Origin Access Premier, that can really only exist within the Origin marketplace. That while EA Access exists on the Microsoft platform, that there's no conversation and even the potential conversation around putting something like that on Xbox, it kind of stops because Microsoft will take a cut of that. And so for a publisher, they can go right from their launcher, and maybe we see bigger bundles, we see discounts there, we see a lot of sales that do not necessarily revolve around the Steam holidays that have been so ingrained with PC gaming over the last decade or so. So I think that this ends up being an interesting topic that we'll probably come back to when we get into the fall, because we're all going to be playing on a handful of launchers, thinking about what games that we'll be playing this fall. And I think there'll be another opportunity there to come back to that with Call of Duty, with some other things that we also get. We have a big player in this marketplace that has not gone down the road of their own launcher yet, and that's 2K, right? That's Rockstar and GTA and the potential of Red Dead as well, and what they do with that will be interesting to see what direction they take as well.
That's got to be inevitable though, right? I mean, it's just given how much GTA 5 has made and they're splitting it with Valve every sale, you know what I mean? So it, they're probably watching Origin, and we'll see if, seeing if it implodes and, they walk it back. But I think it's been successful for Blizzard. It's not like Blizzard has 50 games on their platform. Blizzard and EA are very different. Origin and BattleNet are very different. But Blizzard's making it work. So Epic's doing it with one game. I don't see why they haven't, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that I feel like we're in a totally different place with this than we were when Ubisoft launched their Ubi accounts, back half a decade ago, right? And the complaints about how you needed to log into Ubi, even if you were going through Steam, and then you could have your own Ubi launcher, right? And now that just they were out in front of that. Maybe they handled it in a clumsy way, and we were still in this idea of everything coming through Steam. But you're right. Both the diversification of the sales marketplace, with Humble becoming larger, and Green Man Gaming becoming larger, and GOG, and itch.io, that there's all kinds of other platforms selling games now than there was a decade ago, when we had a more unified marketplace and platform. So I don't know if that's bad. I think it puts a little more onus on us as gamers, but it also provides probably in the long term a little more flexibility and opportunity for competition, as you said as well. And
Well, I'm gonna also sound a little bit like a corporate shill, but game prices have not increased with inflation. I mean, back in the late '90s, we were paying $60 for an N64 cartridge. Um, we're paying $60 for a game now. We've talked a lot about how loot boxes and whatnot are the means by which and DLC, paid DLC, are methods that game developers can still make a profit while they're balancing the fact that development costs have gone up, but the price per unit has remained stagnant. So with these direct to consumer gateways from the publishers, they're removing the middlemen. That's ultimately, in theory, passing the savings along to the consumer, because um, we might not have to see prices go up so that they can recoup their costs and pay the premium to Steam, or recoup their costs and pay the premium to Google. So if you want to look at it with a glass half full kind of aspect, it's like, hey, my Madden's going to stay at $60 instead of going up to like a default for the base price of $75 or something in the future.
well, and I think you're right, and it also provides publishers additional ways to provide incentives as well, like the Madden example. That if you get it straight through the publisher, you get a little bit extra this year.
Mm-hmm.
Than you would if you purchased it at a big box store or even through Sony or Microsoft. So I think I think we'll go out on that glass half full piece there, Swiss, and potentially we'll be coming back to this idea of where people are gaming and what platforms, not only platforms in terms of PC versus console, but even just publisher platforms within one console or within one gaming platform like the PC. So, any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
Agascles is going to disagree with this episode.
Yes, he is. And it'll be interesting to see, though, because I really would be interested to hear that point. And if you guys have out there listening, if you have counter arguments, leave them in the comments, because you're right. I mean, it is the biggest argument counter to this is that it's an inconvenience for the consumer. Are we willing to pay a premium price for convenience? And I think there's plenty of other consumable goods where the answer is yes, we are, and maybe gaming is that same way. Or is this just the kind of the evolution of the marketplace? Is that
It's even beyond just the evolution of the gaming marketplace. I mean, I think Disney is launching their own streaming platform. It's going to rival Netflix, which is a rival to Amazon. It's just like we're seeing this everywhere.
right?
CBS launched a new Star Trek
CBS
just to
did.
go
Yep.
with all access. I mean,
At San Diego Comic-Con, we got the announcement of DC Universe, right, where they're going to have both online comics and also original series, right? We had so yes, it is. It's just this.
the power of the internet.
Yeah, but so the other piece this is another topic for the other day, I think, is what does that do for us as gamers in a sense of community? And is it already too late? We started the day, we started the podcast talking about kind of the shared experiences around some Nintendo platforms, and that even if the sales numbers were lower than what they are now, it sure felt like everybody was part of that conversation. And so whether it is this goes all the way back to cable television, right, and even further, right? It's that splinterification of culture. And so is this just gaming's opportunity to join into that splintering, and that everybody is siloed into their own game, not only their own genre but even their own game within that genre, versus having a much broader palette of games and games to talk about because you were playing them, whatever came out at your local rental shop, versus, well, this is the live service that I subscribe to, and dive deep into that. So So yeah, I think there are more conversations to have here on E2KG's deep dive, and I'm sure that we're going to be talking about what this means not only for the industry because we love our industry numbers, but also for our gamers, for ourselves as gamers, for families, and what this means for the future of gaming as a culture and a hobby as well. So, love to hear your feedback here. So, leave it in the comments. Join the conversation. Otherwise, for myself, DBQ Hams, and SwissGuard, thank you for joining us. We'll be back here tomorrow night on the E2KG network with the playlist and the gaming experience show to hear what Agasicles and Osiris Prime have been playing and to hear my report out on my gaming assignment. So, any final thoughts? Any final plugs, Swiss?
Nope. Looking forward to the play show as always.
All right. Well, thank you all, and thank you for joining us. And until next time, we will always try to be enough to keep you going. Have a good night.